Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. This is Nerd Level Rising. My name's Jake, and wow, October's almost over. When this video airs, Halloween is tomorrow, and you may have noticed during October a very much of a lack of spooky season book content on my channel, and that's just because I really never read any horror before. You know, I've read a couple tiny things, as I'll mention here during the video, but not much at all. Not much at all. And this video is really just me putting some stuff out there that I really want to check out. You know, I made a video talking about sci-fi I want to get to. I've made some videos talking about long epic series I want to read, or some trilogies that are high priority. And this is sort of my, like, these are the horror books that have gotten sold to me by watching other booktubers or what have you, and just like, or just being aware of them in general. And like, I think when I do check them out, I think these are the ones that are going to be at the top of the list. And I certainly have blind spots, right? So if you're watching this, if you're a big horror fan, please head to the comments, give me your recommendations, let me know where I should start. If I mention an author that you're like, hey, that's not the best starting point for them, maybe try this one instead, definitely please let me know, because I'm not going to pretend like I'm super knowledgeable about a lot of this stuff. So let me jump in. These are, again, like those other videos, you know, these are not in a priority list. This isn't a top 10. This isn't a, you know, this is just a group of things that I think would be fun, that I think I would enjoy, and are at the top of the list of when I eventually do pick up a horror book. It's going to be probably one of these. So here we go. Let's jump in. So I guess I'll start with easing in. I'll start with that. And there's really 3 different books that coincidentally I believe are all trilogies that I think would be a good starting point to kind of just dip my toe in and see what's up, while still having that like big epic fantasy feel that I love so much. You know, that's my number one always. So number one is, I'm sure as a surprise to nobody of this easing in with a fantastical world with a big horror element, Empire the Vampire by Jay Kristoff. This one is, I've wanted to read this for a long time, and you know, the more I see updates about how book 3 is going, and I'm like, I really want to get in on that with everybody else. So this one is becoming harder and harder to keep kicking down the road. So I think it's going to be hard for something else to knock this one off as the first one that I grab. But hey, you never know, right? So, but we're starting with this one. What is this about? And you'll see, I'll give you guys a quick synopsis of these in case you're not aware of them either. And just, you know, full transparency, I use ChatGPT to give me a quick 1 or 2 sentence spoiler-free pitch for each of these books. So I'll keep them short and sweet. I just didn't want to, you know, take the time to sort through Amazon or Goodreads or whatever and find longer synopses, I think is the plural, and pare those down so that they're not super long. And you know, this was just faster for me, if I'm being honest. So I'm gonna look at my notes and kind of read these off just to kind of give a quick vibe. But Empire the Vampire, epic dark fantasy that follows a legendary vampire hunter recounting his life's battles in a world shrouded in eternal night and ruled by monstrous vampires. That sounds awesome, right? That sounds really, really cool. I know there's got the epic fantasy vibe. You know, after reading so much Sun Eater and really seeing what can be done with that idea of the main character at the end recounting his story, and how, you know, a common critique of that device is, you know, where's all the tension going to be? I know he lives to the end or whatever. And man, there's just so many ways to keep tension in a story. There really is. It doesn't have to just be, is the character going to make it or not? Because let's be honest, the main character in a book 99% of the time is going to make it anyway. You know what I mean? Maybe not the very end of the last book or something, but for the most part, you know, plot armor exists for a reason, right? But nonetheless, that device is something that I've come to certainly like. And this story, you know, there's probably a lot of really cool epic battles, a lot of dark, scary, monstrous vampires, as it said. I love that. Vampires are super cool. I love vampires in movies. I'm here for it. You know, I'm here for it. And I've heard so much good stuff about Jay Kristoff's writing and the very creative profanity and all those things that just sounds like a lot of fun. So that one's very high on the list. Number 2 is Kagan the Damned by Jonathan Mayberry. And this one is a dark fantasy adventure about a disgraced royal bodyguard who, after failing to protect his kingdom from a brutal invasion, embarks on a vengeance-fueled quest against a powerful dark sorcerer. that sounds really cool, right? Just sounds like a cool, fun fantasy story, but obviously has some horror vibes that are mixed in there as well. I've seen some big raving reviews from some other booktubers about this one also, so that keeps it high on the list as well. And number 3, this is one that's more recently come onto my radar, and this is The Aching God by Mike Schell, which is a grimdark fantasy that follows a retired adventurer who's pulled back into service for one last deadly mission to retrieve a cursed artifact, risking his sanity and his life. As he ventures deep into ancient haunted ruins, he faces unspeakable horrors in a journey fraught with tension, mystery, and the cost of facing the god's wrath. Come on, dude. Come on. That, like, what more needs to be said after a synopsis like that? Grimdark, horror, ancient, mysterious, ruins and artifacts and all, like, to me, that's one of my favorite things about the Malazan books is how much you get into like the ancient civilizations and the ruins and the echoes of the past that show up now. I love that aspect of it, and it sounds like that kind of thing could be here. It just sounds really, really cool. And I believe this one might be self-published, if I'm not mistaken. So that's really cool as well. So there you go. There's 3 options to kind of ease my way in using epic fantasy as the vehicle to kind of get me into the horror vibe and then see where it takes me. So there's that category. Category number 2 is going to be like legends, classics, that kind of stuff. And I'll be much more brief with these because, they're legendary. So number 1 would be the Anne Rice vampire books. These are ones, especially the first 3, because I've heard some very mixed things about, after that. But who knows? If I love them a lot, then maybe I'll keep going and just judge for myself. I think that's always the best way to go. Read them for yourself and see. But my girlfriend and I watched Interview with the Vampire, I don't know, a few months ago maybe, and I really, really liked it. And it got me even more interested to check out these books. And I know a lot of people have spoken incredibly highly about what Anne Rice does with vampires in these. And, even just reading the source material for that movie sounds super interesting and super fun. And it's pulling me in and like, hey, well, if I'm already there, might as well read a few more of them, right? So that's high on the list. Obviously, elephant in the room is Stephen King, right? Everybody always says Stephen King is a place to start. Stephen King. And I know, right? I know it's definitely on the list. I don't own anything. I almost bought a Stephen King book a few times, but, I just haven't pulled the trigger yet. But I believe I'm probably going to start with something early in his catalog, kind of get, eased into the Stephen King work that way. Dark Tower's on my list of stuff I want to read. But in terms of starting with like a horror book straight up, I might start with something like Salem's Lot. I think that's the one that I tend to lean towards starting with. Obviously, It is up there. Pet Sematary, The Shining. There's so many classics from King that I really need to get to at some point if I want to really see what horror is all about. So there it is, Stephen King. Overarching umbrella thing that I want to get into. Then some other classic stuff, right? Edgar Allan Poe. I read a few Poe stories growing up, and I really, really liked them. And I actually own a collection back here on the shelf of his complete works. And, getting into rereading a bunch of those that I really liked growing up and getting into some different stuff. Very, very cool. And then also H.P. Lovecraft, kind of the same thing. Except I did not read any of that growing up, so that would be brand new to me. I also have a collection of those. I don't think it's a complete collection, but it's sort of like a greatest hits kind of deal. Those collections are special to me because I actually picked them up in Salem, Massachusetts, when we took a trip up there and just spent some time in the Witch City. And I was like, man, they have these collections. They're at a really good price. I might as well grab them, and it'll be a special memory from Salem that was just such a fun, amazing trip for my girlfriend and I and one of our friends who came with us on the second day. We had one day there, just us two, and then a second day with a friend also. And man, it was such an awesome trip. And to have that souvenir that also I can dive into some classic horror stories, that'd be awesome. And then some other like classic stuff would be Bram Stoker's Dracula that I've never read, that I'm a little on the fence with the epistolary style of it. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but it's such a monument of the genre. I kind of have to try it. Mary Shelley's Dracula, Frankenstein, is another one that has kind of been revitalized in my desire to go back to it after seeing, like the Talking Story videos, with they all reread it and did it together as a family. It's like, that was so cool. And I read that one in high school and I really liked it. That was like one of the very few books that I enjoyed being forced to read in high school. And I don't remember very much about it. So I would really like to go back and revisit. And then last, this one is kind of a weird one for me to put on this list, and that's The Exorcist, because seeing part of the movie, okay, so I'm very young. I don't remember how old I was. I was probably like 5 or 6 or something. I was very young. And I walked through the kitchen and my mom was watching. My mom's a massive horror movie fan. And I walked through the kitchen and it just happened to be the scene in The Exorcist with, when she's in I think it's a hospital bed or something, or maybe it's just a bed. And it's the pea soup scene and it's just all this stuff. And it scared me so bad that to this day, I'm very sensitive to like demonic possession stuff in movies. It just that is my button that just freaks me out like nothing else. So putting this on this list, it feels like a very brave move for me, but I think it's also one of those that would help me to kind of work through that fear a little bit, to get in there and expose myself to it and see. I never watched the full movie. Up to now, it's still just that clip is all I've ever seen. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if that helps me kind of move through that fear. Okay, so next category. This is stuff where I'm going off of recommendations from other booktubers and just stuff. Really, all these come from booktubers. So shout out to 4 different channels that I kind of pulled these from, and that is Mike from Mike's Book Reviews, that everyone knows he's a big horror guy. He's got a bunch of cool videos, so I pulled some good stuff from him. John from Talking Story, another huge horror fan, got some things from him. Andrew from Andrew's Wizardly Reads, that I know is kind of a bit newer to being super into horror, but he's got some videos that he's talked about some fun stuff. And then also Chris from The Bearded Book Beast has put out a video or two talking about, he had one video that was his favorite horror and some stuff he's really excited to check out, but that he's also just mentioned some stuff he's read here recently that has been really fun to follow along with. So from those guys collectively, and I'm sure I'm forgetting some off the top of my head that I've seen, but putting together a few things that I really want to get to based on what they've said that they really enjoyed and sounds really interesting to me. So category number 3, the BookTube recommendations. Here we go. Number 1, this one is Heart-Shaped Box by Joe Hill, who is the son of Stephen King, I believe, right? So, and everyone says that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So that's cool. And obviously I don't know how much I like Stephen King, so maybe I won't like either of them, but I would hazard a guess I'm going to like it quite a bit. So what is Heart-Shaped Box about? This follows an aging rock star who impulsively buys a haunted suit online, only to find himself entangled in a chilling and relentless ghostly vendetta that forces him to confront his darkest fears. Cool. That sounds fun, right? These ones are a harder sell for me because I'm such a fantasy sci-fi person that having things that are very grounded in the real world and almost feel slice of life. Obviously, it's not real slice of life because there's all the horror stuff that's happening and supernatural things and whatnot, but that feels more that way and doesn't have all the fantasy elements or the sci-fi elements that I'm used to and comfortable with. It feels a little scary to kind of get into it, but anyway, it still sounds like a really interesting premise, and all the praise that I've heard for Joe Hill and this book in particular makes me interested. The next one that was kind of from my sci-fi background that I have not read Hyperion yet, but is at the top of my list of what I need to get to, and by all accounts, I'm sure I'm going to enjoy it very much. And I also hear that Dan Simmons is a great horror writer as well. So on this list is The Terror by Dan Simmons, and this is a haunting blend of historical fiction and supernatural horror, chronicling the doomed Arctic expedition of 2 British ships trapped in ice and stalked by an unimaginable creature. With themes of survival, isolation, and dread, this story explores both the brutality of the elements and the horrors lurking within human nature. Again, I think like a lot of these, what more needs to be said? That sounds interesting. That sounds, a sense of dread is something that I find really interesting in books. When I read Howling Dark by Christopher Rocchio in the Sun Eater series, I felt that very strongly. There was so much just dread just dripping off of those pages. And to get into, that wasn't even the main point of the story, you know? So to get into a story where the horror and the dread is very much at the forefront, that sounds pretty cool. I definitely feel intrigued by that. So The Terror by Dan Simmons. Next is The Ritual by Adam Neville. And I landed on this one because I know Mike from Mike's Book Reviews read a different Adam Neville book, and I believe I have this correct, that it was this author, that he wasn't super crazy about it, and people told him like, oh, you should have started with this one, and I think The Ritual was the one he was told that he should have started with, so that's what I kind of lean towards starting with. Anyway, so this one is about 4 friends on a hiking trip in a Scandinavian wilderness who take a disastrous shortcut leading them into an ancient haunted forest filled with nightmarish symbols and a malevolent presence. As they struggle to survive, they confront both supernatural horrors and the fraying bonds of their friendship in this intense and atmospheric thriller. You know, again, it's kind of similar to The Terror, where that feeling of dread and that feeling of just waiting for something bad to happen, it just sounds really interesting. It sounds like a really interesting reading experience to me, where I just feel very uncomfortable, but also can't put it down. And yeah, and the fact that it's called The Ritual makes me think there's something else going on here in this wilderness, and something creepy has got to happen, or some sort of ritual probably happens, you know. So yeah, there you go. The Ritual by Adam Neville. We'll check that one out at some point. I like stuff with cool atmosphere. You know, that was one of the biggest things that stuck out to me from the Esselmont Malazan books. Is his atmosphere that he can create is very strong, very palpable, and very I don't want to say entertaining per se, because it usually feels bad and uncomfortable, but it's impressive and it really and immersive. So yeah, there we go. We got that one. Something that's a little bit lighter maybe is My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. And this is a darkly humorous and heartfelt horror story set in the 80s, where 2 inseparable high school friends face the ultimate test of loyalty when one of them shows signs of demonic possession. So this one is on my list, especially because of like the 80s vibe. I really like that kind of retro Halloween feel. My girlfriend and I have been watching a lot of like retro TV. It feels weird to call it retro, but like stuff from the 80s and 90s and even early 2000s, where it just, Halloween felt different, man. And it was different on TV. You have all the TV specials, you have all the commercials, you have all the, you know, all of the Nickelodeon and Kids WB and all of those channels that had such fun Halloween stuff going on, and it's just doesn't seem like it's like that anymore. And the vibe even outside of that, just in the world, it just feels a little bit different. So it's fun to revisit that older time frame, and I love Stranger Things, and I love just everything about Halloween in that kind of time frame that just makes me very excited to check this one out. Seems a little bit more lighthearted. Seems like it's got those some things about similar to that last one, the Adam Neville book, where there's these friends that are facing this thing, and it's kind of testing the strength of their friendship. That's always an interesting thing. So Grady Hendrix, right towards the top of it. It sounds like his work is generally kind of this vibe, where there's a little bit of a humorous, lighthearted aspect to it, but then also gets into the horror stuff. So sounds cool. And the last one on this list for me today is Midnight Mass by F. Paul Wilson. And this is a gripping horror novel set in a world overrun by vampires, where a defrocked priest finds himself drawn back to the faith to protect his community from a growing bloodthirsty menace. Simple enough. Scary, invading vampires, some religious stuff going on. That's always a really interesting duality when we have that sort of that religion and faced with supernatural and monsters and all that. I always like that in TV or movies, and to see that in a book sounds really cool. And this just feels like a very classic horror story. And vampires, right? Like I said earlier, vampires are always super cool. So yeah, Midnight Mass, F. Paul Wilson on the list. There you go, right? There's sort of my list, and I know that there's a ton more that I probably don't even know about. They're supposed to be incredible. Like I said, let me know in the comments, dude. Let me know what I'm missing. Let me know if I should start somewhere else with these authors. Let me know if there's something else that's like, you know, just a big pillar of the genre that like, hey, like, those are cool, but make sure you get to this first, or something like that. Like, I'm a complete newbie to horror, so please let me know. Please talk to me in there, and just talk to me in general, man. The comments are so fun to go back and forth with you guys, and I always learn some things and come away with some cool things and make relationships with you guys and become friends, and that's all super, super cool. Thumbs up on the video if you liked it, right? That always helps the video grow and see more people. And otherwise, If you enjoyed this, if you like what I'm doing here, consider subscribing. That's always fun to see the community grow, and you know, it's just been an amazing ride, dude, and it's so fun to see, you know, this community that's kind of building, and you know, I see the same names pop up in a lot of the comment sections and the live streams and all that, and it's so cool, man. So thank you guys for that. And lastly, man, happy Halloween. Happy Halloween. You know, this video should post, I believe, the day before Halloween. I'm recording it a tiny bit early just for schedule reasons. But Halloween is so fun, man. It's one of, if not my favorite holiday, just purely because of the energy and the feeling and the vibe. And, you know, it's not quite the same where I live now, where I really don't get a fall. Where I grew up in Illinois, we had some very, very nice fall weather on most Halloween. Sometimes it was actually too cold. But for the most part, we usually had really good weather on there. The leaves are all on the ground. The trees are bare and they look kind of creepy. And there's that crisp, chilly wind. And man, if you live somewhere where you have that, I'm very jealous. Please enjoy it and have some good candy, have some good Halloween treats. If you get trick-or-treaters or if you trick-or-treat, I hope that's amazing and safe, but super, super fun. And, you know, I don't really get that here either, being in this big apartment building and all that. So I'm missing out on some of the fun Halloween stuff, but I'm doing my best. We got some decorations up. We're watching a bunch of cool stuff on TV. I'm thinking about books, at least, even if I'm not reading them, I'm at least thinking about them. And yeah, man, just happy Halloween. Be safe. Enjoy it. Get spooky. That's what I say.